Good afternoon. This is Russell Farbiars with the latest edition of Not Minding My Own Business. I am honored to be joined here today with Dominic DeFreece from DeFreece Financial Solutions. Welcome to the show, Dom.
Russ, thank you so much for having me on the show. This is it's actually my honor. I've seen the podcast. I've seen the things going on. You're doing wonderful stuff out here in the community. So I really do appreciate this opportunity to showcase a little bit about myself and my business.
Wonderful. And I appreciate knowing that there's some listeners out there. I have had the pleasure of watching your business go from a little bit more than an idea, but to a really successful business that is rapidly growing. So I congratulations first on all the work that you've put in. You think you moved into your office in October of 2019.
That's right.
And we know what happened a couple months later, and it wasn't really ideal for a brand new business to all of a sudden be in a pandemic shutdown. So tell our listeners a little bit about what you do and what has made you so successful in such a short period of time.
I appreciate the kind words. I really do. We opened up the doors October 19th of 2019. And as you know, we closed our doors March 13th of 2020, which didn't give me a lot of leeway, a lot of runway to continue my business or to grow the business or even start the business, if you will. And we were blessed. We were blessed with opportunities. Once the pandemic happened, we were quickly able to pivot to using Zoom. A lot of clients did not mind it, if you will. It got a little struggle toward the middle, obviously, because we just didn't know where the pandemic was going. But that day of opening the first account in, I think, maybe February of 2020 to where we're at now with over 160 plus clients, either related to information, meaning financial literacy on investments, insurance, life insurance, Medicare, if you will, and then also just the financial literacy programming that I put together for multiple nonprofits in the local Berks County. It's been a little bit of a journey, and we've had to make sure that we continue to add one of those pieces, one of those, if you will, I call business lines, to the arsenal to ensure a comprehensive review, if you will, for clients from the ages of either 20, where we're just starting out, we need a budget, to the clients who are basically Gen X, Gen Y, where we're, hey, I'm just like you, I've got a kid going to college or some sort, and we're trying to figure out how do we retire and at the same time pay for college. So I got folks that obviously just retiring saying, hey, Dominic, I'm 10 years, 5 years away from retirement. I'm in retirement. And then those obviously who are, Dominic, I'm in retirement and now I'm either at 62 collecting Social Security or about to collect it at 64, 65, 66, 67. In addition, I need some help with understanding this Medicare thing because it's a little bit confusing. And by the way, potentially one of the more expensive bills when you hit retirement. At the end of the day, when we think about medical cost. And so we're always grateful that we got rid of the biggest cost, which was maybe our mortgage. But then all of a sudden we retire and now we have medical expenditures that are pretty close to my mortgage payment. So it's a little bit of a daunting task.
Or worse in a lot of cases. Although I believe Congress has recently passed some legislation that may be a little bit helpful with Medicare drug costs, but we'll still see how that pans out because every time the government thinks they're helping, it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, and obviously that's a big topic that we talk about when it comes to that donut, right? That Medicare donut.
Right.
Yeah, people obviously paying into the system and based on their premiums, right? Based on their premiums, but eventually hit that threshold where premiums been paid, policy's been paid, clients have already paid into the system. And now guess what? Now we're going to start this donut process because you haven't hit the next threshold, which is causing you to now have to pay everything from one point to the next point fully out of your pocket. Now, back in 2021, there was some Congress-led legislation and then obviously some Senate-led legislation to help with it, but that donut still exists today.
Right. And the new legislation, that what it does is it allows Medicare to negotiate with certain drug companies for on certain medications, and it's supposed to. I think over time there will be more and more that can be negotiated on. But the one thing that was disappointing to not be included was some sort of price stabilization for insulin, as I'm sure that a lot of your clients that's a drug that they need,
Yes.
that they're still paying a lot more for.
And I think that was the real crux for a lot of people to say, hey, how do we price stabilize for anything, not just insulin, if you will. These prices seem to continually go up every year, yet the medication is still the same. We haven't changed anything. We haven't updated anything. And not that it needed to be updated, meaning the medicine itself. It's just the price that keeps getting higher and higher. And that stabilization is still a big piece for a lot of folks, because let's be very clear, that donut, when it comes out for these Part D, the prescription drugs, that's a bigger piece for a lot of clients in Medicare. And I understand about going to the hospital. I understand about seeing the doctors and things of that nature. But the prescription drugs is a big, big piece, and has been a drain for a lot of retirees, if you will.
So what services do you provide around Medicare to help your clients plan for Medicare and access the best level of care that they can access?
And so we do sit down. We sit down and we actually say, okay, what line do we need? Should we be looking? And as you know, there's multiple parts A, B, C, and D. And we take our clients through, okay, well, here's the original, A and B. Okay, C and D are now the additional pieces. Which ones do we need? Which ones do we want? In addition, maybe it's not an Advantage plan. Maybe it's a supplemental plan that we really should be looking at. And I try to make sure my clients are educated. The first time we get to these gates, let's make sure that we're choosing the right avenue. Is it an Advantage plan or is it a supplemental? I know a lot of people who do both. I know a lot of people who do one or the other, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not a one size fits all, is what I always need to make sure everyone understands. We do need to have some information on yourself, some family history. What I like to always make sure I understand to help ensure that whatever my advice is, because it's always advice, it's me giving you information so that you can make an informed decision. And it doesn't matter if it's Medicare, life insurance, investments. My job is really always to make sure that you have the information to make the most informed decision for yourself. I will always give you my advice because I've never cannot shut up about myself. but it is still your decision.
Well, we will be having your wife on the show in a couple of weeks, and I'll ask her about your ability to stop talking.
and that may be its own podcast in itself.
Now, Dom, you mentioned the Advantage plan and the supplemental plan. Now, I know what those are, but some of our listeners might not have the full picture on those. Can you just explain briefly what those two terms mean?
Okay, so just very quickly, that Part C is that Advantage piece, correct? And it's going to give you the ability to potentially have dental, maybe a little bit of vision. What it's going to do, though, it's going to be priced at either a $0 pay premium or could be as high as $200. It just depends. It may come with, and it usually comes with, a prescription D attached to it. But let's be very clear. It's an Advantage plan, okay? It's not a supplemental plan, and I'll explain a little bit of the difference in a moment, but let's just go through the Advantage piece. It's going to still provide you just like any other medical piece. It's going to provide, you're going to pay a premium, you're going to have a deductible, you're going to reach a certain threshold, it's going to keep you in that threshold, and it's going to function as your medical coverage. But what does that mean at the end of the day? Because you have the ability to have an HMO, PPO, EPO, and all that good stuff. It just means it's going to function like your medical. You're going to pay a premium, you're going to have a deductible, and you will have a max payout. Meaning at some point, once you hit that deductible, your policy is going to kick in, but there is a max that you're going to have to pay. God forbid you exceed a certain limit in some of the activities you do. The benefits are, as I just mentioned, it's that dental and that vision, because you're not going to get that unless you pay separate costs on that. Okay. Supplementals are ideal when you have some items that are in your family history. They are the ability to basically say for yourself, in my opinion, they cover that excess, right? That 20% that is not being covered by parts A and B. this is going to cover that next piece. So this way you minimize your out of pocket. You're going to minimize your out of pocket because you're going to be frequently potentially utilizing it. You're going to be going to a doctor on some periodic basis more than basically a quarter. You may be going weekly, bi-weekly, sometimes monthly, just depends. But you're going to go on a more frequent basis as opposed to just 4 times that you may with the Advantage plans. It's going to allow you to still also have the ability to add in your prescription with that piece, but it's going to be an add-in to it, okay? It's not sold in the package, that unlike the Advantage plans are. At the end of the day, it really is going to depend on you and your family history on which one that you really need. It doesn't mean that you cannot have both. Let me be very clear, because some people get that confused. Well, maybe I can have my friend. No, you cannot have both. It's one or the other. But it is going to be dependent, really decisive on really yourself and your history.
Okay. So the Advantage really subsumes part A and B, the hospital and doctor coverage, whereas the supplemental, as the name suggests, supplements an A or a B.
A or B, correct.
Okay, and that makes sense. But it's good to have that information out there. Now, a common question I'm sure that you get, and I know that I get, is what coverage does Medicare provide for something like long-term care or stays in a nursing home?
We get that a lot, obviously, and you know that, and that's that Part B element of it. But the idea is that there are long-term care policies that exist with the John Hancocks of the world to help you really supplement your income, or really supplement the payment, if you will, that you're going to have for any type of long care stay. Can you have coverage? Do you have coverage? Yes, you have coverage. I'm not going to say you don't under Part B, but you're really going to be looking at a long-term care policy. I try to make sure that folks understand each application, each approach is a little bit different. It just really is going to be depictive of what you think you're going to need, because long-term care is long-term care. Okay, acute care is acute care. There are distinctions that have to be made to say, okay, what is it that you really need at this point in your life?
So acute care really is, the goal is for improvement and eventual discharge, whereas long-term care, would you agree, is exactly that. It's really perpetual care. That includes inpatient treatment, but also room and board.
Room and board, in the sense of that you can obviously do many of the daily functions yourself, but you have inpatient assistance if needed. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to do everything. Okay, let me be very clear, but it is a distinction that always has to be made with the clients, that acute care is, guys, you're not able to do many of the things, and they're just trying to make sure that they're getting you ready to do it, and then hopefully pushing you through the next cycle, of which is that rehabilitation that eventually gets you back on your feet and out the door. The long-term care, as you described, is a long-term care. It's a living. You're going to be staying a little bit longer there.
Not always by choice, but more by necessity. But how do you work with your clients to make sure that they can afford to pay for that long-term care if they need it?
It's a combination of multiple things. One of the things that, Russ, we've talked about is really sometimes depending on, and I don't want to call it the net worth of a client, but I guess just baselining it, right? It lends itself to saying, okay, can you afford this or can you not afford that? Okay, where are your financial situation now? Where is it not at? Okay, we're not looking to grow at this point, right? We're looking to just utilize the assets that we have and ensure that we're able to stay there. And one of the things that we've talked about, obviously, is one of those is an annuity, is the Medicaid annuity. That's come up a few times for clients, right? To help them draw down their assets at the same time, but make sure that they're not overexposed and able to still continue to do what they're doing in a long-term care, potentially facility of some sort.
Right. So that Medicaid annuity allows, within certain restrictions imposed by the law, allows a client to draw down those assets and convert it into an income stream in a way that creates eligibility for Medicaid or medical assistance. And do you work with clients on on those type of annuities on a regular basis?
Yeah, so let's take one step, right? Let's all take one step back, right? Because a lot of people may not completely understand the Medicaid annuity. Because there are definitely requirements that have to be upheld with this, as Russ, as you were indicating, because of the law. But that Medicaid annuity it's a single premium annuity, and it contains very much zero cash value. It provides the income for that drawdown, a steady income as the assets are drawn down. Properly structured, it's a tool that basically we say it's a spend down. It's going to eliminate the excess accountability assets, okay? But to ensure compliance, we're looking at an irrevocable policy, number one, non-assignable, right, if you will. It has to be also something that provides monthly payments that are equal amounts. And most importantly, the name on the name of the state Medicaid agency is also is the beneficiary of this policy. And a lot of people need to always understand these are the criteria that must be applied and followed to ensure that it's Medicaid compliant.
That is correct. And then what I always like to emphasize on the beneficiary is because the first response is, well, I don't want to give all my money to the state. No one wants to do that. But the state is the beneficiary to the extent of benefits they've paid out. So you still would have contingent beneficiaries that would likely be family members.
Correct. There's always any policy that you ever put together. It doesn't matter whether it's Medicaid or not, if you will, when it comes to the annuity or any type of investment, you're always going to have a primary. The state is the primary, okay, the medical, right? But the contingent folks are contingencies. They're meant to basically be there in case of the primary not obviously utilizing all the assets, if you will. And it's designed that way so that, to your point, to be the assurance for families to say, well, I don't want to give away everything. I want to obviously transfer some wealth, but I don't know how much I will be able to transfer. And we don't know either, to be perfectly honest with you. We do our best from an actuarial standpoint, or when I say the actuaries put it together, when they put the policies together, but it is still, it's still an educated guess at the end of the day.
Right. But it is a tool that's able to help transfer wealth from one generation to the next.
Oh yeah, it's always been designed that way to always be something that it will be as transferable in some way, shape, or form to the next generation, to ensure that the wealth that one persons has set up is provided to the next generation, to ensure that the continuity of really the lifestyle that some of the folks have gotten used to, right, in some way, or at least that gift that someone was looking for or a necessary need.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dom, let's take a step back and talk a little bit about how you originally got started in your line of work.
And so, without going too far back, right, because I'm going to start to age myself fairly quickly. I started the journey back when I was back in 2001. I was actually an accountant by training from Penn State with a minor major, depending on how you looked at it, with finance. And so I started my career as an accountant with a little firm known as Deloitte & Touche. Spent a few years there, did very well in myself and understanding a little bit of the process of attestation and advisory, and then was able to jump into banking. Fast forward from 2001 all the way to 2013, if you will, I was doing a lot of work for a lot of institutional players, and then I really wanted to try to change the focus. I wanted to change the focus to really be a little bit more localized for myself and my family, meaning working with clients on a more intimate basis as opposed to just this grandiose, here's a report, it goes up to another report, goes up to another report, and then gets distributed. I wanted to have a little more dialogue, a little more interaction with folks, in particular because of the way I had grown up. I always wanted to make sure that as I grew up, that we had opportunities, right? We were blessed with opportunities. I was blessed with being able to go to the service. I was blessed with able to go to college. Not everyone has those opportunities, okay? Let me be very clear, and I understand that. And we've done our best. But in 2013, it was my way of being able to say, I can help individuals, companies as well, depending on how the size is, to help make those decisions that are going to move them forward. Hopefully in life, hopefully with what I do. My boutique shop, as you say, and I'm thankful for it, right? We started in the pandemic with no clients. All right, January 21st, I think, was the first potential client. And then we rolled through the 19 and 20, and now we're in 2022. and we're rolling. And our boutique shop is managing quite a few different number of assets, if you will. We're dealing with a lot of different individuals, but the journey was always stemming from really just one concept: allowing people to be informed to make the best decision. In life, we just get sometimes focused in on decisions being made for ourselves. And I just didn't want that for myself or anyone that I could speak to or help.
And it's not just on an individual basis. You mentioned earlier that you have these financial literacy courses. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about those?
The financial literacy courses were designed actually from my mother. As once my father had passed away at a young age, and my mother had to really start to put together a budget and try to understand a lot of little things, if you will. Now, my father worked for the Postal Service, so my mother was blessed with a pension, if you will, and obviously was blessed with eventually my father's Social Security and things of that nature. But from that perspective, budgeting, savings, investments, credit cards, what is credit, if you will, how to avoid some of the pitfalls, if you will, and then home ownership, because my mother owned a home at that same time when my father had passed away, so we were able to move out of an apartment, move into a home. Those are challenges that when you don't know something, you're kind of like on the forefront. You're trying to figure it out. And the course was designed to say some of the things that I know my mother had to go through, my family had to go through, I had to go through as well, to ensure that we stayed the course. My mother, my father wanted us to grow up and be productive members of society. My brothers and my sister, right, if you will. And to this day, my brother has 2 master's degrees. My sister has a master's degree. Everyone's graduated college, thank God, right? And we've worked our way through. I was fortunate with the GI Bill. The GI Bill helped pay a lot of my college, so it just continued to foster from there. But the program was designed to ensure that individuals who are sometimes, life is life, and you're in a certain circumstance, and it just is what it is. But that circumstance does not have to define you. If you can hold on to some principles, and that's what the course really stems from. Here are the principles that helped my mother, and if they can help some of the participants, if you will, then power to it. Now, not every course, because it's a 10-course lesson. It's 10 courses in the curriculum. Not every lesson is going to be obviously applicable to one person or to all the people, but it's hopeful that 1 or 2 are applicable. The attendees, they all get the binders that I put together for them. They get all the literature, and they always have me as a reference once the courses are done to say, Dominic, hey, I have a question on whatever it may be. I have a question on budgets. I have a question on fixed costs and variable and fixed expenditures, whatever the case might be. I always just wanted to make sure that they had that.
That's wonderful. And is there a cost to this course, or is it?
There is a cost of the course, and what typically would happen is that we work with I work with a specific grant writer to ensure that the nonprofits, many nonprofits, number one, have to have some type of financial literacy program. That's number one. Typically for those that have attendees, if you will, or participants that are somewhat living at a location, things of that nature. And so the grant writer obviously puts together the grants, and then my services, if you will, for the course and things like that, are paid from the grants as opposed to being directly paid by the, if you will, the nonprofit.
But the individual who's taking the course is not paying for it.
No,
but
not at all.
And is the course available online or anything like that?
It will be. It will be actually put together online. Hopefully this fourth quarter. We test piloted a few things that, not to toot my own horn, but a lot of the people have said, hey, Dominic, it's really you, so we love you live. We love to have you live as opposed to virtual or virtually online. However, to ensure that we're impacting as many people as possible, yes, we're looking to make sure that it's either online by the fourth or first quarter of next year.
Wonderful. I hope you'll share a link with us when
we definitely
goes live.
We're excited about it because I know I actually had an opportunity this past June to present the course to my mother, to give her an idea. So it was her 75th birthday present. We gave her other things for a present, but I gave her the course binder dedicated to her. If you
Wow.
and she was pleasantly surprised and happy about
I'm
it.
sure she was thrilled and incredibly proud
Uh,
of all the work you've put into this.
she was very taken back and very happy to have her children and her grandchildren all in one location for her birthday, and she enjoyed it. Let's say it that way. She enjoyed it.
I am sure. So Dominic, are you originally a Berks County, or are you a transplant?
I'm a transplant. We've been here, my daughter. So we have three. Let me take one step back. Number one, my wife and I, we have three kids. We moved here when our second kid was being born, Isabella. She's now 17. So we've been here 17 years, if you
Okay.
will. But I am a transplant. I'm a transplant from multiple locations, but the bulk of my time has been spent in either the state of New York or the state of Pennsylvania. My wife and I, we've traveled all over Pennsylvania, from the Poconos to Bradford to Harrisburg to before we came here, it was Montgomery County. So we lived in Lansdale and Harleysville, and then we moved here to Reading.
So what brought you to Reading?
Oh, that was really easy, actually. At that time, I was working in Westchester, and we lived in Harleysville, and that commute, because of travel and just things like that, was getting longer and longer every day. And at that same time, my mother was moving in with us, and it made sense that with my wife and my mother and us expecting another child and us already having one child, we needed a little more space. And so my wife went on a search as she was pregnant, as she was as she was very pregnant at that time, because she loves taking on the challenges when she's got 20 things other things on her plate, as you'll find out during your your meeting with her. She found a house, we fell in love with it, and boom, we just made a bid. We sold our house, and it all took no more than 30 days. Surprisingly, back 17 years ago. And we love this. We love it here because there's so many opportunities here in Berks. Number one, there's so many beautiful things. We love going up to, if you will, Jim Thorpe. We love taking a trip on Penn Avenue here, exactly where my office is located. Our offices are located, if you will. We also love the wineries in the local area. And being that we are Penn Staters, both my wife and I grads, having a campus here allows us to also still stay connected to our alumni association.
That's great. So yeah, you pointed out that Penn Avenue is a nice location, and we do, as you know, have an office in the same location as you, on Penn Avenue.
Yes.
But there's a lot of nice festivals that happen sort of down the block, though, in West Reading.
Yes.
I don't know if you were at the French Fry Festival this past weekend, but that was definitely hopping.
Russ, as you know, as I'm a foodie, and I was disappointed that I was not able to be at the French Fries Festival. I did see all the pictures, but you're absolutely right. Between the Beer Fest, oh my God, and Jazz Fest, and just all the things that we do here in Berks County, in our area, just amazing. To the Santander Arena and all the activities between the Reading Royals, the Reading Phillies, if you will. We're there at the baseball game. As a matter of fact, I think we were going in another couple of weeks to the baseball game. It's just, there's so much activity that you can do right here within, my goodness, within a 25-minute radius that you just don't get to do in other counties and other areas of the world. And Pennsylvania's been and New York have been my two spots, in particular New York City. But I've been plenty of places just because of the military and because of just business travel. And we do love it here. We do, really do.
Well, wonderful. So, what would you say are your biggest successes and failures, both personally and business wise?
Biggest success. I always start with my biggest success was obtaining the rank of sergeant before the age of 21 in the military. That was one of the big things for me, that I knew I really wanted to do that. And that just kind of started that go-getter track, if you will. And then obviously taking courses, obtaining my degree, and then eventually getting married, and then obviously having our three beautiful children. Right? I really can't top that. I really just can't. From a business, from a growth standard, and from just a family standard. From a business standard, it was eventually making this plunge. You mentioned back in 2019, our friend Freddie Vasquez, approached me and said, "Hey, we have this space available. What do you think?" And I just remember saying, back in June, "I just don't know. I just don't know. I just don't know." And then I think I remember giving him the check in September of 2019 and said, "Please do me a favor, just go ahead and cash it. Um, go ahead and cash that check, because I don't want to pull it back from you in any way, shape, or form." And we've never really looked back, and it's been a blessing to honestly say that from our offices, as you've seen in our offices, we do touch well over 160 clients, and we're growing, right? And we're growing every year, with the expectation to add another almost another 50 clients before the end of the year to the practice. And so it's now starting to really come together with saying, okay, the virtual assistants, the assistants on site now, and eventually looking at potentially maybe even more partners to help us helping grow. Really what the concept is just making a choice, being able to make a choice. Failures. Oh, two big failures. When I was younger and I got my job in let's say the real world, right, with Deloitte and ING and all the other banks, my biggest failure was not being there with my family. I will tell you this honestly, as a father, I kind of fell into what my dad used to say, "Hey, I'm just here to, I'm here to make sure that you guys have a roof, some food, and lights on." And my dad was there on the weekends. He was until he passed away. But I knew, for me, my biggest failure was I was not always there. If it wasn't for Maylene always trying to make sure that I was involved, I saw pictures, I did feel I lost a little bit with the kids in their early ages. So I did consider that my biggest personal failure. In addition, also my relationship with Maylene at that point as well. It took a toll because I did travel a lot. I did do a lot of things that were nowhere near the house. And, there was a time, and it was a joke, but it was a joke, but it still hurt. Maylene would show up at the school, and once eventually I showed up at the school, they're like, "Oh, she really is married." Oh my. And no, I'm not, I am here. I do show up. I'm just not always around. In business, the biggest failure was not trusting myself. I think self-doubt is a real thing for anyone who is working and anyone who definitely potentially owns a business. Whether it's a small piece or a large piece, that's to each his own. But at one point, that self-doubt really did hinder me. It really caused me that to overthink a lot of things.
Absolutely. There's a technical term for it called imposter syndrome. And I think as business owners, we all suffer from it from time to time. But certainly you've overcome it, and you've achieved a lot in a short period of time, and a lot to be proud of. If any of our listeners want to work with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Anyone can reach out to me, if you will, via email or via phone call. I always try to make sure that I'm always accessible. One way to reach out to me is obviously via email, and that's Dominic@DeFreeceFinancial.com. Or you can always just call the office at 717-685-6279, excuse me, 6279. I always forget all these numbers because we have like 4 or 5, if you will, that come into the office. But I'm always available just for the question. "Hey, Dominic, I have this question." There is no charge for that, folks. It's just an idea. We just need to make sure we're understanding. And sometimes you just don't know who to trust. And by the way, you're not going to trust me right from Jump Street. And that's fair. We have to have a little more dialogue, a little more interaction. However, if it's a question, I'm going to give you my honest effort to answer your question. And if you get your answer and you never come back, that's fair, because that happens. But I've always found that I've had clients come back 3, 6, 9 months later and say, "Dominic, I appreciated the information you did. Can we talk about it now again and restart the clock?" Okay. I'm always there.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you, Dom, for taking the time to speak with me today. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
Russ, I do appreciate everything that you're doing. I appreciate the success that you've been having with your practice, and I continue the blessings and if you will, as you continue to go forward. And again, thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our listeners. This has been another episode of Not Minding My Own Business, and we'll see you next week.